How's it going, everybody? My name is Gene Villanos from the PPC Cave, and we're back with another episode with my lovely co host, Ryan. Ryan, say hello to everybody.
Hi guys, how we doing?
We're doing great because it's me and you, and it's another episode where we can talk about PPC. And today we're talking about scaling Google Ads in 2025 without wasting budget. And real quick before we get into it, this episode is, I think, super basic. It goes into our series, Google Ads for Beginners. And I think it's important to understand that if we cannot scale without wasting budget, we're not going to have many clients that come back, are we, Ryan?
Yeah, this is this is very true. Because if we're wasting the budget, then what's the point? I think any good Google Ads account manager needs to know that to reduce wasted ad spend should be like the number one rule. There's many rules, but definitely top five is don't waste budget because what's the point? The client has worked really hard for their advertising dollars, pounds, whatever it might be. And then if we're wasting it on bad search terms, bad campaign types, products that aren't converting, then it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, definitely don't want to waste any budget where we can help it.
Absolutely. And diving straight into it, I think it's important, like you said, for search terms not converting, is understanding what are what does a conversion look like, for an account. It doesn't matter if it's e-commerce or lead gen, but if we don't even have conversion tracking set up, which is such a basic thing that we always talk about, but it's super basic and fundamental because it's so important. Because if we don't have conversion tracking set up, how are we going to know what's waste or what's not? What are your thoughts on that, Ryan, real quick?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you really do need to make sure conversion tracking is in place, but I would argue that with e-commerce, if you're defining what conversions to track with e-commerce, a little bit easier because you can have add to cart conversion tracking. You can have begin checkout conversion tracking, and of course the main one, which is purchase conversion tracking. But even if you're tracking add to cart, even if you're tracking begin checkout, you have some sort of degree of understanding of what your users are doing. Because if they're adding to the cart but they're not converting, why? If they're going through the checkout process but then they drop off, why? So I think that can help influence, marketing strategies. And I say marketing strategies because it's not just Google Ads. It's also what we do with social. It's also remarketing. It's also email marketing. Abandon checkout type of emails and saying come back, we'll give you 10% off, 20% off, whatever it might be. With lead generation it is a little bit more tricky, because usually it's give us a call, fill out a form. So in terms of like soft conversion actions or micro conversion actions, if you will, for lead generation, a little bit more tricky. Button clicks, I guess. If somebody's trying to complete a form, maybe that could work. But still, you really need that indicator of success, and conversion tracking is really crucial for either lead generation, e-commerce, but without it, we're unable to scale anything. So,
Yeah. I mean, speaking of scaling, the question is, how do we scale Google Ads in 25 without wasting budget? If I was a new client and we role play a little bit, I'm like, hey, Mr. Fenton, I would like your services. Take a look at my account. What are the first things, existing account, what are the first things that you would basically take a look at and be like, oh, this is a red flag or this is a green flag to scaling that Google Ads account?
wow, that's a loaded question. Um, it's interesting that you asked me this because I've actually just signed a new client last week, and I've been kind of doing this really. He's in the lead generation niche, and normally when I get into an account, right, I think and this could be another episode in itself, which is what to do when you get a new client or Google Ads account. Where do you start from? Um, I'll go through and I'll look at, right, okay, what match types are we using? What keywords are we bidding on? Where has the budget gone? Has it gone on to search partners, display network? Has it gone on to search? Is it shopping? Is it display? Is it performance max? And then if it's say something like search, I'll go in and take a look at the ad groups. I'll take a look at the keywords. I'll take a look at the search terms as well. And then that's kind of where I start my work is I'm going to, okay, first and foremost, it'll be settings. Do we have
Mm.
the correct location settings done? Are we only advertising on the search channel? So I don't want search partners, I don't want display network, things like that. And then I'll take a look at keywords. Is there a keyword where we've spent £5 million or $5 million and we've not had a single conversion?
Mm.
Okay. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but the point is that if there's a keyword that's got a lot of cost and it isn't converting, then why not? I might get rid of it. Is it relevant? If it's not relevant, get rid of it. Give light to other keywords, give them a chance to kind of, cream rises to the top type of thing. Take a look at the search terms and see what people have searched for in Google. And then again, add some negative keywords. At this point, I'll also start thinking about negative keyword lists, things like competitors, things like informational based searches. So, off the top of my head, how can I do this for free or free, you're cheap or, costs or price? If anything has that kind of, you know, search query about it, I'll probably add it as a negative, as a broad match negative. So, like, where, why, does, are, cheap, free, those types of searches I'll add as a broad match. Single word, negative, because I don't want to trigger for those. So that's kind of the process is when I get that account, if you're a new client, I onboard you, that's what I'm going to do. The first kind of day is going to be about the cleanup process,
Mm.
reduce the wasted ad spend. That is always my go-to thing. And it's something that I talk about a lot. It's funny because this is what the title of the episode is about, reducing wasted ad spend. But for me, I always say, reduce the waste, scale the winners. So we want to funnel the budget towards what's working, take the budget away from what isn't working.
I
How's
love
that as
that.
an answer? Is that pretty good?
That's spot on. That's from
Thank
someone
you.
that's years and years of experience in both lead gen and ecom for sure. So I think it's to add on to that because that's exactly what I do is
Mm,
reduce the waste when I see an account. I like to just go into campaign view and toggle last 30 days cost. And this will show you what percentage of budget is going to XYZ campaign. And I'll start there. If it's the highest cost in the last 30 days, I'll take a look and see, okay, well, for some reason, this is the campaign that this client is spending the most money on. So they probably think it's the most effective. And I'll go ahead and click through. Like Ryan mentioned, go through the settings. I think there's a lot of sneaky settings in Google Ads, if it be even for Performance Max shopping and search, where you have presence and interest instead of just presence. We've talked about that. Make sure that that's correct. And then, like what Ryan mentioned, is display and search partners. And I'll go through the campaign view, last 30, all time. What is the cost of us spending on display, us spending on search partners, and is it taken away from where we actually want to spend because it's not getting conversions or even getting impressions? A lot of people go over that where it's like, yeah, it might not be spending a lot of money on display network where you're really trying to focus on a search network or search partners, but you're still taking impressions away from where relevancy is the most, and that's google.com. So I do exactly what Ryan says. I'll go through auto apply recommendations. But another thing that I would also do is look and see if there's any limited by budget campaigns and then go there next. That for me is a green flag indicator that maybe this campaign is really turning out a lot of conversions. and maybe it's time to put a little bit more fuel on the fire. But not to be too hasty, I'll have to look and see, okay, is this budget working in the last 7, 30, 60, 90 days? And is there consistency there? When was the last, if you go to change history, when was the last change that was significant to this particular campaign? Because we all know one surefire way to really ruin scale for a campaign is multiple increases in budget without really holding the line and seeing if that previous increase in budget is working well and consistent to the previous times. Any thoughts on that of how you scale specific budgets, Ryan? Especially if it says low budget, even though that's not the only indicator, obviously. But any thoughts on scaling slowly and strategically when it comes to campaigns?
Yeah, it's a conversation that has to be had with the client because you can't just say, right, I'm gonna all of a sudden take you from $50 a day to $5,000 a day. The client will be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So you need to have that conversation. And, if you suspect that there's room to grow, if you're looking at things like limited by budget, if you look at your search lost impression share due to budget and it's quite high, then you know that you're losing a lot of impressions due to your budget. And that if you want to capture more, there's more market available for you. You can show these things to the client. You say, look, we are limited by budget. If we want to increase the campaign budget, we can do, right? There's searches out there that we're not showing for. So that's a good way of presenting it to the client as well. I also like auction insights. I think that's a good wake up call for clients to see where they are placed compared to their competitors. That can be a really good, you know, I guess, kick up the ass for clients to say, right, we need to spend more budget. We need to get serious about this. So, yeah, I think budget scaling is the easiest way to scale. Of course, it is because, if something's working, more fuel on the fire, like Gene said. So, it's looking at those columns as well. But yeah, strategically scaling because you don't want to go from 0 to 60, right? You don't want to just go foot down, pedal to the metal, I think you guys say, and haul ass, using all my Americanisms. That's what you say, right? You guys say
Whole
that.
ass. Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
That's great.
Um, but this is the point: is that you need to be strategic. You need to do it in slow increments. So I always say, and really, I think it's a good rule of thumb for Google Ads: slow and steady wins the race. You're not going to get anywhere if you make fast decisions. If you take the budget from, like I said, £25 to like £125 the next day, it's not going to work. It's going to confuse the campaigns, going to confuse the algorithm. But if you say, right, this is where we want to get to, this is the budget that the client has signed off on, and yet we're here at like $50 or £50 a day. How do we get up to that point? And I would say every 5 days, every 7 days, do an increment, 10, $20, something like that, £20, whatever it might be, in that range. Because the campaign is still performing, it's still learning, and well, it's not learning, it's still performing, and that's what you want. You want to reduce any negative impact on the campaign, right? So that's why scale gradually with the budget. Every 5, 7 days, add 10, add $20 here and there, and then you're not going to negatively impact the performance, but you're also gradually scaling up, and that's what we want. And I do this all the time. I do this all the time for my clients. In fact, I did it not too long ago with a client who said, right, we want to get up to, I think we had 2 weeks and he wanted to get up to like $325 in spend or something. And we were at like 125. So there's 200 to work with. So every 5 days I was going in and I was increasing it by like $50. And eventually we got up there, which was good, right before Black Friday, I think it was. And we left it there pretty much until the Christmas, the holiday season. And the client was really happy. And we managed to have a really good um, especially a really good December, really good. So yeah, don't do it too fast. Don't scale the budget too fast. definitely take your time with it. Is that something that you do as well, Gene, or is it just me?
No, yeah, it's a good point because I had this, and this is a conversation that most PPC managers have, especially if you're doing well. How do we scale? I love the ROAS that we're at. How do we scale? And I got this from one of my clients, and they're a little too eager. We're at $1,000 monthly budget, and they wanted to raise it up to 6,000. And I was like,
Wow.
yeah, and that's when we were like, okay, there's probably three bullet points here that we really have to first get at to convey to the client that this going from 1,000 to 5x, to 6,000, that's a very risky move to do in a short period of time. And even in 3 months, that's still risky. I like what Ryan says. To scale it in little increments and then provide either a week or 2 week window to see if consistency holds. I personally like to do 10% to 15% increase, but I would like to tell people that for me, performance max needs to be at a smaller, in my opinion, smaller increase because one, there's opaque, less transparency of what you're actually scaling. Okay. For something that's shopping or search, that these performing keywords in the last 7, 30, 60 days probably are going to get scaled, especially if you have the correct bid strategy. But for performance max, it's a little bit more opaque where you're not seeing the full transparency. So slow that down a little bit. So, yes, I think it's super important uh, as we're moving on to really understand that the budget is the easiest way to scale, but it could put fire over something that's good or totally deter the whole account because you did it too fast and didn't monitor within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even a month safely. If you can do it and you have time and the client is not super adamant on doing it now or there's no time constraint, I would even love to see like a month. If I was to increase it 15, 20%, let's watch it over a couple months. Um, but yeah, the second way to really understand how to scale without losing Google Ads budget, and losing is a relative word, but is bid strategies, right? There's definitely some things that I audit. I'm sure Ryan will audit and see, okay, well, there's this bid strategy here that may be manual. Is it getting capped? Do we keep it at manual, increase the budget, or do we move on to something that could be max conversions or max conversion value? Or is the target CPA or the target return on ad spend capping what we're doing right now because I'm seeing us supposed to spend $10 a day, and for a whole 7 days we're only spending under that. Can't do quick math, so I didn't have anything for you there. but but yeah, like what are your thoughts, Ryan, when it goes to the next step? You see the budget, you did the settings, auto apply, all the guts of the campaigns are good, the fat has been trimmed, and now it's time to look at scaling through bid strategies.
Yeah. Bidding strategies are really interesting for me at the moment. Because I've been trying quite a few. I've been trying manual bidding. I've been trying max clicks.
Mhm.
I've been trying max conversions, and I'm really trying to find the one that I'm seeing the best results with. And right now, probably is max conversions.
Yeah.
I have a client, a lead gen client here in the UK in the plumbing niche, super competitive niche. And he's advertising to like 3 or 4 different locations. And he's got like, well, £30, so probably like $40 or something per day budget, which, if you know, in terms of lead generation, if you know, in terms of the plumbing niche, and if you know, in terms of 3 or 4 locations, is not enough budget. But yet we are absolutely smashing it. We're getting like a call a day. We're getting like lead forms. It's going so well, and I'm surprised because I genuinely thought, yeah, this guy's got no chance. Like £30 a day in one of the most competitive niches in the world of advertising, I would say, in plumbing, and yet we're managed to do it. So why do I think that's working? And this is something that I'll get into a little bit later as well. but I think it's working because of maximized conversions, and I think it's working because I'm pretty much using broad match as well, right? So this is the thing is that with broad match, with maximized conversions, that is like the sweet spot at the moment. And I think I was speaking to someone as well, another account manager, and he was saying it could be the future. When you look at the data behind broad match and smart bidding, all these different signals are flying out, right? So you've got now things like time of day, you've got device that they're using, the location they're in. They Google knows, okay, what searches have this person done prior to visiting your website, right? Or prior to searching for your service through Google. What websites have they been on? What is their browser behavior? What do they typically do online? Do they purchase large like things online? Do they call companies up very often? Do they typically leave lead forms? All of this data is like a signal that is behind broad match and maximize conversions. And I think that is really helping this client that I have kind of scale up really performance. And I can't believe on such a low budget we're able to do what we're doing. It's pretty crazy. So that is what I'm really excited about at the moment for 2025. And I'm starting to, what's the word? Kind of put that out there for all of my clients to really start testing broad match max conversions for a lot of other accounts. I tried it, I think, late 2024, probably midway through the year, maybe somewhere around August, September time, where I was trying broad match and I wasn't really seeing the results, but I don't think I was doing it right. I think I did it where I didn't have a negative keyword list. I wasn't really staying on top of search terms. I just kind of let Google do its thing. And when you do that, that's a big no-no because you're wasting budget, which we just talked about on a lot of low quality search terms. So I need to swallow my own medicine. I need to take my own advice and do a lot more in terms of negative keywording, which is what I have been doing. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of success. So best way to scale, really, for bidding at the moment for me is maximize conversions. And I think you don't really need to have that much data anymore. You could have gone back a year, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and people would say you need 15 to 20 conversions, in a month, in the last 30 days before switching over to max conversions. But honestly, I think it's boo honky. Can I swear?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay. I always have to check. It's like a little theme between you and me. I always check, see if I can swear. It's bullshit. Yeah, it's bullshit. You don't really need that anymore because of these signals. If Google understands what people are searching for, where they're coming from, what sites they've been on, their browsing habits, if Google understands this person is lower down the funnel now, they're ready to convert, we're going to bid higher, bid more aggressively to get that conversion, then you don't even need that historical conversion data signal anymore. You can just say, right, here's broad match, here's maximize conversions, go off, look at the signals and do its thing. So that's my bold statement really is that, but I'm keen to get Gene's thoughts on everything I've just mentioned, as well as what you think, Gene, is the best bidding strategy for scaling and how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to think about, with the way automated and just these different bid strategies being coupled with broad. I think that the reporting and the analyzation of what Google Ads is right now for every conversion is just so much more of a wider scope than it was 5 years ago. Just because we always had that adage, right? That rule. If you want to use an automated bid strategy, you got to make sure we have 20 conversions each month, 25 conversions each month. And now it's been expedited because of all these, different tools that Google has implemented within Google Ads that we start to see a full picture and full process, full journey of the converter now. So I do agree with Ryan that even back then when people would always say, only having broad, I mean, I get it. There are three different match types for a reason: exact, phrase, and broad. And there are good ways to use those, best practices to use each and every one of those. But I do see with broad, if you are on top of negative keywords, because there will still be irrelevancy from a competitor perspective, from a platform perspective, just weird search terms that will happen if you're using broad, is just to make sure that you really stay on top of not only negative keywords and doing the little search term report, clicking, making it an exact match, but take time and zoom out, create a new spreadsheet. I like to title one negative keyword list competitors, the other one irrelevant, or it's just random search terms, and then the other one platforms, and then go through that. I would say weekly at least, depending on your budget and depending on the volume that you're getting, and be on top. If you're running broad plus an automated bid strategy, if it be max conversions, conversion value, or ROAS or CPA, you have to understand that it's going to come fast and it's going to be a lot, especially with broad. And I think that's the counter to running broad, like Ryan said. In my opinion, it's not only that Google has gotten better, but I think we've gotten better to expect what we know is going to happen once we click broad match. So I do definitely agree in that regard. But from my experiences, primarily in e-commerce, when it comes to an automated bid strategy or scaling an automated bid strategy, I do like to, if I see target return on ad spend, I like to go back, months and months and months, especially for e-commerce on Performance Max. I like to go months and months and months back and see is if the budget is a specific budget and we're not spending that, and we have target return on ad spend, and we're not even reaching that return on ad spend, and we're not spending the budget, that means you're getting capped. That means your bid strategy right now is not working. Yes, there's seasonality, but that's why I combat that with going back to multiple months so that you can see a bigger picture. But if I see anything on a new account that I'm trying to scale that has return on ad spend, I'm very, very, very skeptical. I'm extremely skeptical to see that this person, has an account that has ROAS. Let's look. And more often than not, there are some bullet holes, or there's some things that I could kind of see that, okay, there's blind spot here. Why isn't this not reaching actual return on ad spend? And then I look at the budget. Why isn't it, maximizing the budget? Most of the time, especially for Performance Max and e-commerce, I see that I'll revert back, just do a little click, take the target return on ad spend off because it'll be on max conversion value, and just run max conversion value or max conversions as Ryan likes to run, and just see how that works. Give it a month. Sometimes it's not always going to work well, but most of the time, if you've had target return on ad spend on for too long and you're not checking these things, like, is your budget spending? And two, are you actually reaching that return on ad spend? If you're going above, if you have a 2 return on ad spend and you're getting a 300, 400, 500, leave it. But if you're not hitting that in multiple months, that has to be something that you audit. Any thoughts on that, Ryan, before we move on?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if things like target ROAS, target cost per acquisition, target CPA need updating or looking at again in Google Ads, because I've not seen them work for so long. I've not really tested target CPA in a long time, so maybe there's that. But target return on ad spend, I typically don't see working that well. So I'm kind of using it in one or two accounts really, but I guess we're getting some decent results, to be fair. But I don't know if it's they need to look at it again, or if I don't know how to properly use target return on ad spend. So I may need to do some personal research on that. But the way I have always seen it, as Gene said as well, you cap things, because most of the time when you put target return on ad spend on, what I see happening is Google's going to spend as much as it needs to spend to generate a conversion, and hit that target return on ad spend, and then it'll just shut off. It'll just say, right, we've gotten you a 500 to 1, 500% return on ad spend. We spent $25 out of the 125. We don't need to spend anymore. So the campaign stops running. So you may see when you go back and look at the last 7 to 14 days that you're not hitting the full daily budget that you've got. And the reason for that is because Google's spending as much as it needs to get that return. And then it says, well, I can't get you any better return for the rest of the day. That I've kind of maxed out on that. So I'm not going to bother running anymore. So that's not good because you want to make sure you're spending the full daily budget that you have. So most of the time, similar to Gene, I will take target return on ad spend off. And it is mostly target return on ad spend rather than target CPA. And I'll just free the system because when you think about it, target return on ad spend, even target CPA, the thing is that once you take target ROAS off, once you take target CPA off, you free the system to say, right, now I can just, the chains have been removed. I can just go out and get as many conversions for your daily budget as possible. I can try and find conversion value type of orders or whatever without having to meet a certain criteria that you've set. So I'm very pretty much right there with you in agreement about the way that target return on ad spend is used. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, so wrapping this up, our third and final point, I think that's 3 points. Ryan, do you have any other points that, if it be first party data or any other tips to maintain ROAS or optimizing specific, ads or assets to scale? Any like last point that you have to really make sure that we give our audience the keys to the kingdom on how to scale Google Ads in 25 without wasting budget?
So, I mean, without losing, if we to lose that identifier without wasting budget, I think another way to scale, we've talked pretty much vertically, which is, increasing the budget and things like that, reducing wasted ad spend. But if we're looking at scaling horizontally, then look at campaign types, look at if you think you're doing everything you can be doing, maybe try a search campaign if you're running Performance Max, maybe try standard shopping, maybe try display, dynamic search, maybe try a search campaign where you're targeting certain audience segments, maybe different locations. Maybe, you want to go more informational based. You could be leaving money on the table simply by not bidding on competitors or bidding on or having a campaign, sorry, where you go for like, I don't know, people looking for information. Yes, they're at the first start of that cycle where they're just looking for information. But as they go lower down the funnel and they're in a better position to convert, they may remember you because you had first dibs on their. Do you guys say first dibs over there? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, first dibs.
it's a
Yeah.
good one.
Like first dibs on, you've advertised to them because they asked a question, they visited your website. Now, 3 or 4 searches later, that they're in a position to buy or get in touch with someone, they remember you first, right? So I would say that could be another way of scaling is trying different campaign types, competitors, informational based, like broad match, exact match, dynamic search ads. There's so many different factors in terms of scaling, but if we're talking specifically about wasting budget, the main one for me is really trimming that fat, you know,
Mm.
getting rid of products that have high spend but no conversions or high or low return on ad spend that is just not meeting that mark with what the client wants to hit, and then maybe putting them out into a low performing campaign, like a testing campaign. So you're still advertising them, but you're spending more budget towards the best selling, best performing products. So that could be a good way. But yeah, most of the time, scaling 2025 without wasting budget is trimming the fat for me.
It's a good one. So my last point would be a lot of the times for me as a PPC manager, I like to just go in and mess with things. So I have to understand if it's
Sorry.
scale, if it's scaling, I have to understand that there is data that's valuable, and to fundamentally scale, I have to fundamentally analyze what needs to be scaled. And one example is I have an account that I've been working on for a really long time. Most of the time, we don't have to do anything. We just have to go back to the analysis drawing board, which is the less sexy part of Google Ads, I feel like, is just analyzing and not doing anything. And I was just looking at locations. This time it was a shopping campaign. And I saw that, I mean, it was almost like a 90 to 10% just in California. And I'm like, why? Whoa, this is crazy. This is like an outlier, uh, anal like what is it called? Metric that I need to exploit. So then I started not really doing too much other than, excluding other areas and as Ryan would say, trim the fat, but just knowing that the data is there so that you have a pathway to scale. If it's a location that's really just has a crazy high conversion value over cost or ROAS, well, then maybe start there. Or, Ryan loves to do ad scheduling. Maybe, that needs to be part of the copy, or something like that. Or, like for me, it doesn't have to, you don't have to exclude anything. If you have a lot of people that are buying from California, maybe you take out two or three headlines and be like, we ship quickly to California, something as basic as that, where we're looking back at the data before we're actually scaling and understanding, okay, where are the audiences that I am showing up for? Are there any ancillary or adjacent products that these people are looking at that make sense? Are these search terms, a little high funnel or a little bit more high funnel or broad? Is there a way that I could start to curate a little bit more specificity in my ad copy because these search terms are broad and I want more phrase and exact? So really diving into the data and analyzing it and looking at where is there smoke, maybe there's fire, which is really difficult for me specifically because I just love to change things and try things. But I think that's one tip, is look at the key metrics, look at your locations, look at your devices, looking at specific search terms, and just really going back and analyzing and seeing if there's any audience signals or different observations that you could test out. Because Google Ads has a lot of data, and maybe jumping into GA4. That's one thing for me that's weak, is going into GA4 and looking at the different landing pages and, where the traffic is when it comes to scaling. So, yeah. Any last words, Ryan, before we sign off?
That was a better explanation to when you said I like to go in and mess things up. I'm thinking, what? He's like destroying campaign. He's going to pause things and he's
Not
going to put
all.
things on like $1 a day budget. So,
Just go crazy.
mess everything up. Yeah. No, I think we've hit the nail on the head, but as we're going through this, I still realize, we had a lot of interest a couple of weeks ago about Merchant Center. And, this is very much e-commerce based, but I know a lot of people out there want to hear about, what can we do to scale Merchant Center, improve Merchant Center. So again, I think there is really another episode that is to be had between Gene and I where we go in and talk about scaling and improving Merchant Center. Because again, if you are an e-commerce business and you're listening to this, there's so much to opportunity and potential to be had in Merchant Center alone before we even get into Google. So I think that's something that maybe if Gene, you're up for it soon, we can talk about.
Yeah.
Um, that'd be cool. But, in terms of lead generation, I think, the thing is with these episodes, I think we do scratch the surface of what we can really talk about. But when we really go into everything, these episodes could be like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. They'd be like the Joe Rogan experience by the end of it. We'd be talking about everything. So there is a lot of different ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of different ways to scale in Google Ads, specifically without wasting budget. And I think for the most part, we've kind of touched on the main things about search terms, negative keywords, bidding strategies, campaign types. Yeah, I think we're in a good position. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're trying to provide a holistic approach here, and I think Google Merchant Center is definitely an upcoming episode. And we do scratch the surface. And one thing that I like to say is, if you want more in depth, you're gonna definitely have to contact one of us, or even just email us at the ppccave@gmail.com to maybe ask a question that's more in depth, and we're open to it. I know we do get comments sometimes on the YouTube or our socials, but I think all of that's really important just because it, helps us refresh and realign with what we need to focus on for our clients also. I'm sure if someone has a question out there, we would probably go back to our clients and look at our own accounts and see how can I implement this, or is this a question that is parallel to what I need to do for my specific consultation and management. So yeah, I think that's fair takeaway for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, but I mean, if there's, nothing else, I think you could always find us at the PPC Cave at gmail.com if you have any questions. Every Monday, we'll upload our 12 a.m. episode, Mountain Time. And again, we're still on socials. We're going through some transitions, but I will let y'all know that it's going
Ooh,
to be better.
drum roll.
Yeah, it's going to be better. And I don't want to say bigger, but it's just going to be better in this upcoming 1 to 2 months. So just keep an eye. I think, once it's actually happening, we'll kind of provide more information on what's going on. But I mean, Ryan are excited, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I think we've been doing this now for over a year. So we've crossed that first year mark, which is really cool. And we've put out a lot of episodes, a lot of content, and hopefully everybody appreciates it. I do get comments from time to time saying, "Oh, we've heard you doing your podcast, and it's good and things like that," which I always appreciate the love, and it's nice to hear positive comments. But I think for Gene and I, it does take its toll. Really going through the whole editing process and keeping the socials alive, which I have not been doing whatsoever. I'll be the first to admit that I've really dropped the ball on that, and that's because right now we're going through a bit of a transitional period with the PPC Cave, and we've got some really exciting additions, let's say, on the horizon that I think is really going to improve the quality of the channel, improve the quality of the content and what we put out there. And yeah, I think Gene and I are really excited about what's to come for 2025, really. So yeah,
Yeah, and we're excited, and I hope y'all are too. You can find Ryan Fenton if you want Ryan's consultation or management at ryanfentonppc.co.uk. You can find me at genevillanos.com. And like I always say, if there's nothing else, bye for now.